This is part 2 of how to import Xenoverse 2 models into Blender. If you don't know how to do that, please go check out part 1.
Alright, we're now back to Adult Swim's New Year's Eve bash.
Excuse me, Carl, but by the way this party's been rocking, I'd call it a New Year's Eve bash and a half.
Yeah, that made all the difference.
Yeah, well, half usually about does it.
If you're going to be doing pupil dilation for Xenoverse 2, there's actually 2 ways to do it. One way is by using the traditional Xenoverse 2 mod method that we see with mods like Xenoverse 2 Revamp or pretty much any character with pupil dilation in the original game. And there's also another way to do it, and that's only in Blender, which is using the shader editor of the eye mesh. We're going to be doing the traditional Xenoverse 2 method before we actually do anything else, so we're going to be covering the hard stuff, then we're going to be covering the easy stuff afterwards. So this eye mesh is actually from a character known as Ace from Xenoverse 1, and he's also been modded into Xenoverse 2 Revamp's Victory Road side quest. Basically, you fight Ace in the game and he turns Super Saiyan. You also turn Super Saiyan if you want to as well. But in the game, you'll notice that when he gets knocked out, or basically he gets his ass kicked, you will notice that he has eyes that look like this. These are basically your pupils that have been dilated. Basically what it does is it makes your character's eyes look expressive as all hell, basically. So if your character gets your ass kicked, if their best friend turns into complete and utter dust, if you're just completely shocked at what you're about to see, what have you, basically this is how you express your pupils in Xenoverse 2. But how exactly do we do something like this? How do we make the pupils dilated so that we can actually see them as expressive as they can be in the game? Well, what we can do is we can duplicate the eye mesh and rescale the UVs and reposition the UVs in a way so that they can actually be centered and they would actually work properly in the game. What I mean by that is if your character is looking straight at something, basically in the game they're also going to be looking at that thing straight at it, but their pupils are basically going to be different through bone manipulation. Over here I have my character's eye mesh, which doesn't have any vertex groups, and it can't actually work with bones because it's not parented to the bones that I want to use, which is F_L_I or F_R_I. So how exactly do we do pupil dilation for an eye mesh that doesn't have pupil dilation? What we can do is we grab our eye mesh, go into edit mode, deselect all, hit numpad 7 or 7 if you're emulated with the numpad, select all, hit Shift D, and we want to duplicate it on the y-axis so we can move it to about a couple of units back. Now that we have a duplicate eye mesh, we're going to separate this by selection, go back into object mode, and what I actually like to do for this is we're going to change the name of the duplicated eye mesh that we've made and change it into something called face_pupil, just to avoid confusion. With our duplicated eye mesh, we're going to go into the UV editing mode and hit all of our UVs, and we're going to scale it in a way so that our pupils will look as small as they can be. We're also going to hide the eye mesh that we have made, and don't worry about this, we are going to change this in a way so that our eyes can actually work properly. Move the UVs a little bit to the center so that they can actually be a little more shocked instead of looking all derpy and crazy like, because we don't really need that. That's for the shader to do. I'm gonna keep it at that, so we're going to hit object mode, and we can now see that our duplicate eye mesh is now dilated. Now that we're done with that, we can unhide the eye mesh, grab the pupils, grab the eyes as well, and we're going to hit Control J to join them. But how exactly do we give them the bone manipulation that we need for pupil dilation in Xenoverse 2? Well, that's what the rigging is for. What we're going to do is select a mesh that we're going to use. In this case, we're going to be using the pupil mesh for this. And we're going to assign it to a new group. Invert the selection by hitting Control I and doing the same thing and assign this to another group. Now that all that's done, we can hit the group and we're going to label this one as F_L_EYE. This is going to be for our left eye bone, and for the next one, which we're going to select right here, we're going to name it the same convention, but instead of L, it's going to actually be _R. Now that the rigging is pretty much done and we have all the vertex groups created, we're going to select our armature, or our rig in this case, hit pose mode, and we're going to go down to the F_I bones, if I can find them. There they are. And we're going to move them in pose mode to see if they work. And they work. _R works as well, and so does _L. Another way that we can actually do pupil dilation in Blender is also with the shade editor, as I just mentioned before. What I have here is the attribute node, which is set to the diffuse UV map, which you can see right here. And what I want to do is make a different UV map so that the shader can actually read it as a factor of it being a normal UV map and the pupil dilated UV map. How exactly do we do that, you ask? Well, all we have to do is just do this. We go and create a new UV map. We're going to be calling this Pupil UV. I'm going to copy the name and stick it into the attribute node. And I'm going to connect the diffuse UV and the pupil UV to this mix node. Do the same thing right here, and there we go. We're going to be using this factor as a way to change the original UV to the pupil UV in a factor of 0 to 1. We're going to be pretty much using this as a switch node. But I'm going to set the factor to 1 because we're going to have to still work on the UV. So We're going to go back into the UV editing mode, and with the Pupil UV selected and set as the render in the viewport, we are going into the UV editing space and scaling it to where it needs to actually be scaled. Don't worry about it duplicating, this is just totally fine. But what we want to do here is simply just going into edit mode, and just like how we did with the pupil dilation for the traditional Xenoverse method, we're going to position the UVs in such a way where you can see it be expressive as it can be. But don't want to do that. Going back into the shading tab and going to set the diffuse right here, and now we're going to do this and this, and we're going to paste it again because apparently I didn't freaking get it to work. And there we go. We have pupils dilated in the UV editing space. If the eye texture that you're using doesn't actually work with the pupil dilation that you want to use for the UV editing, well, all you can really do is just use a simple texture that uses pupil dilation for that very reason. Right here I have Ace's pupil dilation texture for Apollonia's pupils as well. So what I'm going to do is just copy the diffuse UV as I just did before, except this is going to be just a regular UV that's just going to be repositioned. So we're just going to reposition it in a way to where Apollonia actually looks shocked as hell. There we go. If we were to go into the shading tab, however, we can actually see that we have two types of textures with two different styles of UVs and two different colors and alphas. Basically this pupil UV is for the pupil dilation texture, which is right here, which is also shown over here as well, and this is the normal eye texture that we use for Apollonia's regular eye colors and irises and all that garbage. Not exactly garbage, but you know what I mean. This right here is your texture for the eye colors, and this right here is also for the alpha of the eye texture that you're going to be using. Of course, they also use different types of mapping nodes, and they use different UVs, so make what you want with that. But with that being done, we are pretty much finished with pupil dilation.
To the beat, y'all.
Check it out.
Come on. 1, 2. What you gonna do?